I'm trapped.
Is masculinity limited to what we think it is? In the United States, masculinity is often characterized in movies and music as a tough, aggressive exterior. An unspoken rule seems to exist that men are not even allowed to cry. Michael Jackson challenges this idea in his song, Will You Be There? Korean pop music videos offer an even more pronounced contrast to this stereotype. The fitted clothing, long hair, and makeup that Korean male pop stars sometimes wear doesn't seem to fit with the American male stereotype.
여기 붙어라 모두 모여라 We gon' party like 여자 이때다 싶으면 묶었던 머리 푸는 여자 올라 got you rescue I'll come get you 내 맘이 너무나 아파
These images can be a shock to the system for the average American viewer. However, some aspects of these videos may seem familiar.
It kind of reminded me of like the boy bands of the 2000s, like 1990s.
The way that they like danced and even the music seemed it just reminded me a lot of American music, or very much techno music, which I find in American music whenever I do listen to that.
The dancing aspects, because regardless of the country, every music video basically has dancing in it.
At the same time, other aspects of these videos seem very odd.
At least the second video, and even the first video, there was a lot of repetitive sexual imagery, and it didn't seem to make sense with the music. Like if you, now granted it wasn't in English, but there was some English words mixed in.
What I thought was really strikingly different is I feel like they're a lot more bold with their styles and locations of where they decide to film their videos, particularly in Gangnam Style. I'm like, why are they in a parking garage and then going to like a hot tub? Like it didn't make sense and didn't correlate as much. Also, their clothing were very, very bright and their hairstyles were very unique.
Mainly the clothing is different, which I find hilarious. Like, okay, in Gangnam Style, they're actually dressed more so like to their gender. But in Tarzan and Fantastic Baby, they're more dressed in the sense of elaborate.
The three videos that I showed the interviewees were Gangnam Style by Psy, Tarzan by Wonder Boys, and Fantastic Baby by Big Bang. For most of the people I interviewed, gender presentation was a huge theme of their comments. Each of these videos portrays a slightly different kind of masculinity. Some of the interviewees did seem to detect this, however, others saw all of the videos as showing only one kind of masculinity.
Well, I would say traditionally, by Western standards, like, now those are very feminine movements and like very just feminine clothing. But, there's a lot more to masculinity than just looks.
Nothing of it seemed to me to be masculine. Tight clothing have never been a big thing with men traditionally. Pastels, which were very dominant in the 80s, granted were worn by both sexes, but I would find it hard to believe that a modern man would be big into wearing a combination of pastels and skin-tight tuxedos.
Everyone seemed to conclude that the male singers had some feminine flair to them. Some accepted this, however, others did not. In his paper on media imperialism, Joseph Strabhauer writes, "Audiences will choose their own cultural products when they can. For example, national pride guides the thinking of many people."
No, for the Gangnam one, I've seen clips of it on Fox News. Mostly they were complaining about it in different regards. From social context, from my understanding, he was also very anti-American, and he had some nasty things to say, and that offended some people.
But sometimes there are influences beyond one's own nationality at play.
My fiance is Filipino from Hawaii, which means I'm definitely going to see more of this sort of stuff. So I'm not going to go looking for it, but it's probably going to come to me.
This documentary tried to answer the question of how Americans respond to Korean pop music videos. Through making this documentary, I discovered that in order to answer that question, you really have to look at the Americans themselves. So when doing that, there are different aspects to consider. The fact that they are exposed to primarily American culture, and also the fact that they have interactions in their daily life that influence how they perceive Korean culture. So ultimately, the question is, how much does Korean culture impact American culture? And secondly, what are the relationships in these people's lives that expose them to Korean culture, or in a positive or in a negative way? Ultimately, those two things really are what determine how someone will respond to Korean pop music videos.